Welcome back, everyone. Today, Dave and I are going to be talking about our idealized version of the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World, trying to put together the best attractions roster on that based on history. If you want to know a little bit more about our guidelines, please watch our previous video. Did a little introduction to this series. And we're starting big. We're starting with again, the most popular theme park, most visited theme park in the world.
Yeah, and this is the theme park. This is the Disney, as most people know. So it's an exciting one to start with. Also one that Sean and I hold very near and dear to our hearts, as we both were at one point in time Magic Kingdom cast members. And as also West Coast people growing up at Disneyland, this is the Walt Disney World park most similar. So this one we have a lot of opinions on, and we hope you enjoy.
So what we're going to do is we're basically going to go land by land. We're going to go for a walk around the park. We're going to take you up Main Street and then do kind of a clockwise rotation going through what basically our entire attractions roster would be. So you can't start any trip to the Magic Kingdom without going down Main Street, USA. So first attraction we encounter there in our version, as in the current version of the park, is the Walt Disney World Railroad, of course. Now, once you pass under those railroad tracks and look to your right, what you have in the current version of the theme park is the Town Square Theater, where you meet Mickey Mouse. What we have decided to put in that space is the Walt Disney Story, a tribute to Walt Disney and his life that was in that space for a long time. I'm not exactly sure the exact dates of when it was there, but I think from the mid-'70s to the mid-'90s, I would say is probably right. I'm sure someone in the comments can tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, and we could have looked it up, but we both agreed that being able to walk into the park and then in Walt Disney World, in the first theme park at Walt Disney World, having the tribute to Walt Disney right there was really the direction we wanted to go. Because there are people visiting who don't really know who Walt Disney is, and we felt like it's important to have that introduction. Now, obviously, if it was in current days, they may update the video a little bit, but that's not the purpose of what we're doing in our video. We're just going off what was there, so it'll be presented as is, and we think it's a nice tribute.
Yeah. What we kind of would have enjoyed the most of the things that have been in that space. We'll talk about meeting Mickey Mouse a little later on as we go through here. The next thing you would encounter is something that is still there today, at least, although it's currently limited in operation. So the Main Street vehicles, so that's your omnibus, your horse-drawn streetcar, your horseless carriage, your fire engine. We would have all those running, of course. And I think we would also have on the other side, on the left side of Town Square, we'd have the Sorcerer's Game running out of that. Is that you think we'd still have that running over there?
Yeah, I mean, why not? It didn't really take.
It's an additional attraction, another thing, another activity for you. So we would have there. Now, in the current version of the park, as you go up Main Street, pretty much everything you look to the left or right is currently a shop. But there were some minor attractions that were there over the years that we would put back in. One being the Main Street Cinema, which would show you classic Mickey Mouse cartoons on the right. That's been turned into a shop. If you wonder what that's like, Disneyland still has a version of that operating.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. For those of you who've been to Disneyland, you obviously know the Main Street Cinema is still fully functional, and it's just a nice way to get out of the heat for a little while, sit and watch some classic Mickey cartoons, and just relax.
And I believe on the other side of the street, another thing that used to be there was the Penny Arcade, which would have sort of classic machines, things like stereoscopes you could look at, things that you would find in sort of early carnivals and things in the early 20th century, very much on the period of Main Street. So that was an additional thing that was a little bit more than a shop, something that was sort of a distraction, and a lot of things in it could be operated for a penny. So we would put that in rather than have the entire left side of the street be a shop.
Yeah, and even though it's not a specific attraction, it's not necessarily what we were going for. I would insist on reopening that central street there and having it open on the other side. I know that they annexed that to expand the Emporium many years back, but I feel like the aesthetic of having a street there, like they still do it for the most part at Disneyland, it would be more, would be an improvement.
Yeah, and they still have that street on the opposite side, and it's clearly supposed to run through and be a street that intersects with Main Street. So we would kind of restore that and give it a little more life, make it feel a little bit more like a place and less like a mall.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as we get to the central area of the park, we are restoring another attraction for the Plaza Swan boats, which would take you around the the plaza mode, as well as a little bit into Adventureland and around the Swiss Family Treehouse. So that's another attraction we would restore. For those of you wondering where the boarding area for that was, it was kind of between the Tomorrowland and Fantasyland pathways, down a little sidewalk over there on the east side of the central hub.
Yes, and obviously we would have to, because we are occupying the same space rule, we would have to narrow the walkways again and around the hub, which I know would not necessarily be a popular decision, but we felt the addition of an attraction made it well worth it.
And that's a lot of things that have been lost over there are those scenic kind of relaxing attractions that gave you towards the park, and a lot of those have been closed without replacement. So in our version of the park, we're keeping a lot of those. We'll talk a little bit about a couple more of those as we get into Frontierland and Liberty Square as well.
Absolutely. And, one particular, moving on from Main Street, we're going to Adventureland now, which is, I know is a very popular land amongst theme park fans for its very well-themed attractions. So in our Adventureland, of course, we kept the Swiss Family Treehouse, something that, is one of those nice diversion attractions, has scenic walkthrough, very true to the movie, just a nice addition there.
Yeah, and there's nothing else that's ever occupied that space, so there's really nothing in our scenario that we could replace it with other than blank space, and we wouldn't want to replace it with blank space.
Absolutely not. No, and, again, a lot of these choices are going to be easy because there's only been one attraction that's occupied the space. And I say that as I say one of our more controversial decisions was
get ready.
Get ready. I know this one will upset some people. The Magic Carpets of Aladdin, we actually decided to remove them. We thought the land actually works is on an aesthetic level and as a traffic flow level better without it. We'll get to it later, but we have spinner rides in our park. We don't necessarily need the Magic Carpets of Aladdin. And
aesthetically, it just looks so much better without it. And those carpets, in addition to intruding on Adventureland, doing this weird tropical to desert back to tropical transition that doesn't really work. You can also see them from Frontierland, so they kind of visually intrude into that as well. And it's not a unique enough attraction or a unique enough experience really to justify it.
Absolutely. This isn't a, for example, at Disneyland, when they put the Indiana Jones adventure in there, that was a big change in the aesthetic of Adventureland, but we felt like that attraction was well worth it. And again, we're covering the wrong park here, but for example, there are choices where we would make where it doesn't necessarily fit thematically, but it would need to be a game-changing attraction to really justify its existence, and we just don't feel that the carpets do that.
We're very sorry to the fans of that attraction.
Yeah. And one of the funniest gags in a pre-show, also, when they say, or as Jeannie likes to say, and then it switches into the Spanish mode, gets me every time. But unfortunately, we felt it was better decision overall to just leave it open. So moving on from there, we went ahead and went with the original version of the Tiki Room, the Tropical Serenade. That way we'd have the fountain and everything intact. That unfortunately isn't there today, even though it is the original version of the show.
Yeah, for those that don't know, there was a period from, I believe, about 1998 to 2011 where they had the Enchanted Tiki Room under new management with Zazu and Iago. And they had taken out the central fountain to make room for an animatronic there. There was a big fire which burned one of the Iago animatronics. So they put back the original show, but they did not restore the fountain. So that's why we're specifically saying the original Tropical Serenade. And there was also an additional number, I believe, too, in the original version of the show.
Yes. So and again, the closest to the original version you can see is the one that's currently at Disneyland. But we didn't think that was much of a controversy. Most people, did not appreciate the under new management, mainly because they felt it went a little too far in making fun of the show rather than being an addition to the show. So
I didn't hate under new management as much as most people do, but I'm not going to sit here and try to argue that we should put in the under new management version.
Anyways, so of course we have the Jungle Cruise, and as Sean and I joked, this is an idealized version of the park. When you ride it, in your mind, just imagine you're getting the best skipper possible, skippers that we've thoroughly vetted. We have them we have them go through an audition process.
And all the effects are working. You go through and everything goes off the way it's supposed to.
Absolutely, and all of these skippers are the best of the best, and you are getting a good one every time. And
I would not be allowed to work there, for example.
That's a lie. Sean's got a wonderful show, but it would be people who are worthy of being watched for the entire trip around the river. And then I don't think this is much of a controversy, although maybe it is to some. For Pirates of the Caribbean, obviously, if we were going completely fantasy on this, we would just put in the Disneyland version. But that's not what we're here for. It has to be something that occupies the space.
And there was no time between 1971 and 1973. But we're gonna have Pirates of the Caribbean. You and I think, tend to lean towards the a lot of the changes that have happened in the past 15 to 20 years before they added a lot of the movie stuff.
Absolutely. I've always been a fan of the original attraction, and by the original, I mean the original Disneyland version has always been my favorite. It's been one of my favorite growing up as a kid. But I think we decided for Walt Disney World, we were going to go with the pre-Jack Sparrow, pre-movie editions, still have all the original effects. Now, as we said in our introduction video, this is the idealized version of that. So we would still keep the audio enhancements and things like that were added to the ride at the same time, but it would just be presented as the original Pirates of the Caribbean. Now I know that, and as somebody who's a fan of the movies, don't get me wrong, I love them. I just felt like the storyline worked better with the original storyline as the Imagineers intended it. And even though the Jack Sparrow editions were, I think, well done for what they were, it just works better as an attraction overall to not have made the changes at all.
I think it became too big a part of the story. I think if they'd executed that in a different way where the characters were there, but it doesn't make sense to me that the entire town is trying to protect Captain Jack Sparrow. Like the story doesn't work as well. It feels shoehorned in. So we're going to shoehorn it out.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not even that, and like Sean said, it's just, these pirates are after Jack Sparrow, but they're willing to give him the formal title of captain, which in the movie was established that only.
This is a whole nerd rabbit hole we can't get too far down.
Right, but it's there. And since our only choices are of things that that have existed in that space, we can't go with our version of what the Jack Sparrow version would be. We have to either choose with him or without him, and we're choosing with him.
We're going pre-Jack Sparrow. Obviously, again, if it was a perfect world, we would want Disney, something closer to Disneyland's version. But we're going. We only have Disney World's version. We're going with the best version of that we can, given what history has given us.
Absolutely. So I my notes here say we've covered Adventureland. So I think we're moving on to Frontierland now.
As we come around the corner, past Pirates of the Caribbean, we find ourselves, of course, in Frontierland. First thing we're going to encounter on our left is Splash Mountain. I'm a big Splash Mountain fan. There's no way that I'm not going to include it. You can make thematic arguments against it in terms of the river progression or it being too cartoony, but for me, it's a classic. I love it. We're definitely having Splash Mountain. Obviously, all the effects are working as goes without saying for everything we're doing here.
Yeah.
Then we would encounter our next Walt Disney World Railroad station, as well as Big Thunder Mountain, and we would also have the version of Big Thunder Mountain where our finale with the shaking rocks is still working.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it was a safety issue that they had to stop that, but thankfully there were no incidents here. We feel like it's safe to put it back in our version of the park, and it just works so much better.
Our lawyers will talk to your lawyers. We're keeping the effect.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we discussed this when we were doing our notes for it. Are we keeping that Pirates Adventure game similar to the Sorcerer's Magic Kingdom? The little scout. I've never actually played it. I just know it's there.
I think we would have to take it out because one of the effects would be in the ride path of the swan boats.
Oh, that's right. Yep. Okay.
Sorry, so I think for keeping the integrity of not having two things in the same space, we might not be able to have that if we're having the swan boat. So
as I clearly said, I haven't done it, so yes, but know that had to leave for that reason. So there we go.
The other thing that went there in that path was the Shrunken Ned's remote-controlled boat, so we also can't have those because of the swan boats.
Right. Which though they were cool in their own right.
They were. But as we exit Big Thunder Mountain to our left, we'll see a dock for the reopened Davy Crockett Explorer canoes. That's the self-powered paddle canoes, which still exist in Disneyland and still exist in Tokyo Disneyland.
Well, they still exist here. It's just not an operating attraction.
Yeah. Here they turned the dock into a smoking section. Now it's just kind of a rest area. So we're putting that attraction back, easy peasy. Same with now we go around, we get to the Tom Sawyer Island and the rafts. We're of course keeping all of that. As we follow the curve of the river around, we're going to arrive at the Country Bear Jamboree, and probably what we would do there is actually have a rotating version of the show, which is how Tokyo Disneyland does it now, where part of the year you have the original show, part of the year you have the vacation show, and part of the year you have the Christmas show. And all those versions have played at Walt Disney World, so I think technically we can do that.
Yeah, I mean,
judges.
I think it's fair game since at once upon a time it was rotated here. Maybe just in a slower fashion. I feel like we can rotate it here in our version. And as you and I are both fans of the Country Bears, obviously we want as many versions of the Country Bears as we can get.
You can never have too much Big Al. I can tell you that is a scientific fact.
It's true. It's been proven.
And next thing we encounter is the Frontierland Shooting Gallery. Of course, we're keeping that as well. So, and that basically gives us our Frontierland roster as we move to Liberty Square, where we have the freedom to make it any way we want.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you continue around the river there and you enter the Liberty Square portion of our park, we've reopened the Diamond Horseshoe Review. You're going to have the best of the best of the shows in there. We're not going to go too much into the entertainment aspect of it, but know that it will be a working theater for our entertainment partners to put on the best show possible that has existed in that space. And of course, we're going to keep the Hall of Presidents. And even though you could argue that without getting too much into politics, that there have been better versions than a current one, the true spirit of the attraction is that it represents all of our presidents. So therefore, we didn't really discuss this, but I feel like it has to be the current one because anything else would be less
it's the central thesis attraction of Liberty Square, and I think you have to have it. And I don't want to get into politics either. I don't particularly love the current president, but I do think the current version of the show is very well done. I've only seen it once, but it's pretty good. The only other thing you could do is before Bill Clinton was president, they did have it where the current president didn't speak. So that is an option, but I don't know. I think you do kind of want to tie into the present with it.
Yeah.
Even if the present isn't to your liking. And
I think we could make an argument that choosing the option to not have the current president speak, but still having the current president present, I think would be a thing.
The current president was always present. It was just until Bill Clinton they didn't speak.
Right.
I think only Abe spoke up to that point. But I'm sort of okay with the current president speaking, and I think anyone, whatever side you're on, when the other side is in power, you're not necessarily going to love that. But I think you should keep it.
Yeah. I loved Morgan Freeman narrating the prior versions, and obviously I would love to have him back, but that's getting really into the weeds. So we'll just say Hall President's current version. Leave it at that. We're also we love the riverboats. So we actually had both the Admiral Joe Fowler and the Richard F. Irvine both sailing around the rivers of America. Yeah, as well as the.
For those who don't know, there were once two riverboats, and one of them was the Richard F. Irvine that's currently the Liberty Belle, but the first one to open was to be Admiral Joe Fowler, which met with an unfortunate accident during a refurbishment in which it was dropped by a crane. So in our version, we never dropped it by a crane. We can operate with two riverboats if we want.
Yeah, absolutely. And because we're nerds, and it's the version of the park we want to visit, we're going to have them both there. As well as many people don't know if you've only visited since I think the mid-90s, but there was also the keel boats that would go around the river, the Mike Fink keel boats. You may want to look that up online if you're not familiar with it, but they're very cool. We're also going to bring those back as well.
Yeah, you may have walked in the area where it used to dock because that area is now extended Haunted Mansion queue.
Yes. And I believe during the Halloween parties, isn't that where the Cadaver Dans perform, or is that still on Main Street?
I think they perform kind of out in front on the Liberty Square side. The extended queue sometimes goes into the actual loading area.
Okay. You obviously, Sean would know better than I am as being a an ad lib cast member. I'm going to defer to him on that one.
On TV.
Yeah, I mean, once upon a time. Never mind. We can edit that out later. And then, of course, we would put the Haunted Mansion back in. And I don't know if Sean and I discussed this, but there was a version of the attraction where we had the post-2007 refurb, but before they put in the animated Hitchhiking Ghost. And I would insist we have the original Hitchhiking Ghost back. I just felt like it was a much better effect. But Sean, feel free to argue with me if you feel differently.
No, you feel strongly about this. I'm not going to argue with you. I think that's totally fine.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about the interactive queue that got added around the same time as the Hitchhikers, but
yeah. But that's a different space, so I feel like it's fair game. We can have the queue, the interactive queue, and you know, I think you and I both agree the interactive queue is a nice addition, adds to the lore of the attraction as well as being something fun to do while you're waiting for the attraction. So I think we both agreed that was a solid addition.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Plus we'll need that queue since we're using the keel boats part of the queue.
Absolutely, yeah, we're gonna need as much space as we can get.
So that's how we'll justify the interactive.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's within the spirit of the rules. So, you know, as I think that pretty much covers Liberty Square. I think we're going to head down that archway, you know, underneath the extended seating for the restaurant there, and head into Fantasyland, the Columbia Harbor House, I mean, and head into Fantasyland. So.
Oh yeah. You noticed that was how we entered. That because we're actually going to have the old Skyway to Tomorrowland station back in its old space where the Rapunzel tangled restrooms are now. As nice as those restrooms are, I want to keep them Skyway. Don't worry, we'll still have restrooms over by Peter Pan where they used to be.
And this is not a shot at Tangled, one of my favorite Disney movies.
No.
And
I prefer attraction over a restroom. I think and I hope that's not a controversial statement.
Yeah, and again, it just came down to simply if you can add an attraction without removing one, why not? Unless you're the Magic Carpets of Aladdin.
As we move a little further into the land, and we have It's a Small World. That's the only thing that's been in that space. It's a classic. We're not going to take it out. Same with Peter Pan's Flight Across the Way. We're keeping that. And as we move a little further in to the left, Enchanted Tales with Belle is now kind of to the left of where the submarines used to be. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but I technically believe we could fit them both in there, maybe with some slight adjustments to the walkways. But if you go to your right, we'll, of course, run into the carousel, and where you would now currently find Mickey's PhilharMagic. Now, there have been a few different shows in that theater over the years. Before Mickey's PhilharMagic, we had the Legend of the Lion King stage puppet show. Before that, they actually screened the 3D film Magic Journeys, which debuted at Epcot. But the original tenant for that space was an animatronic show called the Mickey Mouse Revue. We had animatronic versions of Mickey Mouse, characters from Alice in Wonderland, the Three Caballeros, all in animatronic form, doing a stage show for you. In real life, that attraction actually got shipped to Tokyo Disneyland. That's why it closed, but we're keeping it for our version.
And fun fact, the Three Caballeros from that are now in the Grand Fiesta Tour over at Epcot. So those animatronics worked here at Disney World, went out to Tokyo, worked there for a long period of time, and then actually the Three Caballeros specifically are now back at Walt Disney World and still performing for guests.
Yeah, I've done some weird transfers over the year, but that's probably the most impressive.
Yeah, transferring from Disney World to Tokyo Disneyland and then back. That's a unique one. Well, and then Epcot, so Magic Kingdom. But yeah, I mean, for us, having live animatronics, and don't get me wrong, PhilharMagic is one of my favorite attractions at Magic Kingdom, and it was a tough cut. But for me, putting in one that fits that same spirit, but actually has live animatronics, I mean, watch videos of that show if you're not familiar with it. It's phenomenal. And we felt.
I think animatronics inherently are just have a little bit more repeatability than anything that's on screen, as good as that show may be.
Yeah, and again, one of my favorites. Not an easy decision, but for those of you not familiar with it, definitely go and watch a video of it. I think you'll be impressed.
Yeah. Now, as we cross the courtyard, I mentioned the carousel was there. I think we decided to keep it as the Prince Charming Regal Carousel. As far as the name of it, that's mostly semantics to me.
Yeah, I've never had a strong opinion one way or the other. Yeah, obviously Disney cares enough.
Call that one what you want.
Well, there's enough things named after the princesses, which deserve. They're the heroines of the story. But having one named after one of the princes, I think that's kind of nice. It's a nice little balance. I think I'll take it.
Okay, but if someone passionately wants to argue it should be Cinderella Golden Carousel, then I won't.
Yeah, they can have it. It wasn't something we thought too much about.
So as we go across the courtyard, we come to the space that is now Princess Fairy Tale Hall. We have restored Snow White's Scary Adventures, the original tenant, to that space. We're probably going with the version of it that existed from the 1990s up to the closure, which was a little less intense, a little less frightening than some of the really terrifying 1970s versions.
Which, if you're not familiar with that version, watch a video on it. It's unreal. Like you may be scarier than Alien Encounter, and it may take the title as the scariest attraction ever in the park. It's definitely go check it out if you're not familiar with it.
So we're going with the toned down version that had a happy ending. Which is something that the other versions of the attraction haven't had. Although I hear Disneyland might be putting that happy ending into their version.
Yeah, and again, we are gonna side. We're attractions people. We're gonna side with attractions over the meet and greets. I just feel like I think we both kind of agreed that it's much easier to move a meet and greet and find another space for that than find another space for an attraction. And plus, following our rules, we can only put the attractions where they used to be or where they ended up, depending on the time period.
And technically, character meet and greets used to happen just out in the walkways, so technically we could have that happen. You can talk about operational issues, but technically that's something that has happened, so I'm comfortable with it.
Yes.
All right, now as we come around the corner, we come to what is currently the home of the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh. We are probably fairly predictably going to put the original tenant back in that space. That's, of course, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. That's an attraction that still does exist at Disneyland, but by most accounts, the more elaborate and more impressive version of that attraction actually was the one that existed in Florida. It was a double-track design where the two tracks would go in different spaces but occasionally interact with one another. And so just a really fun ride, something that I love doing. Make sure I always do it every time I go to Disneyland. I never got to experience the version here, though I have researched it extensively, and I would definitely want that in my version of the Magic Kingdom.
Absolutely. I think this was actually probably one of the attractions that inspired this video more than anything else. And don't get me wrong, like the attraction that is there, I mentioned Winnie the Pooh, not a bad attraction. And it utilizes that space well. But Mr. Toad, I mean, that's just classic Disney. And on top of that, I think it would have been a much more difficult argument to put it back in had Disney gone all out and put in Pooh's Honey Hunt from Tokyo.
Yeah, that's an incredible attraction. We'd be having a very different conversation if that was the one.
That was in, many people don't realize that opened in, I believe, 2000, which was just 2 years after the Mr. Toad closed. So it's not unrealistic that it could have been built in that space.
Yeah, it was right around the same time. So certainly technologically, it would have been possible with the right budget. But given that was not the case, and that we're not putting in sort of things that have not existed, we're putting the original tenant back in. And speaking of original tenants, across the walkway from Mr. Toad was the original location of the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride. What is currently there now, where the lagoon used to be, is where you'll find Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, and where the kind of back show building is where you'll now find Little Mermaid. But we decided, because it was such a unique attraction that provides such a unique experience, that we wanted 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea back, even though we had to sacrifice two fairly popular attractions in order to do so. And
I think, for you and I, we both kind of look at this we look at this very holistically. And by holistically, I mean, we look at this park in the presence of Magic Kingdom, but also in Walt Disney World, I mean, and also on a worldwide, with all the foreign parks. And, even if we were to access to attractions, they both exist in other Disney parks around the world. So we felt like that was, as somebody who, wants to visit all the parks, it was an easy decision to make, because there is only that one version of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in that format. I know there is one Disney Sea, It was a completely different type of attraction. This is the only way to get this unique experience back.
Yeah, and maybe it's because I never got to experience this version of it. All the pictures I see of how beautiful the subs look running through it, it almost has as much value aesthetically as it does as an attraction.
I agree with that.
You know, especially as you're going over it in the Skyway, which we have also brought up.
Yes, we're very happy about that.
As we come around the corner, we'll still have Mad Tea Party in the same space it is, and just beyond that, the Fairy Tale Garden where Merida has her meet and greets. We'll keep that because there really hasn't been anything else in that spot. But if we go to our left, we actually are keeping things pretty much as they are as the Storybook Circus Week. Our other options would have been to put back a version of Mickey's Toontown Fair, or the previous versions to that were Mickey's Starland, Mickey's Birthday Land, but that was always kind of a fairly cheaply and quickly thrown together area, whereas the current area is very rich in detail and storytelling. So we have the two Dumbos, of course. We have the current version of the Barnstormer, current version of the Railroad Station.
Well, and I feel like having the dual Dumbos, which I feel like Dumbos is the classic spinner of Magic Kingdom.
Absolutely.
I felt like that justified, by us keeping the two Dumbos, it kind of softened the blow of losing the Magic Carpets of Aladdin.
Yeah. So you still have three spinners in the park in total. We'll get to that third one as we move to Tomorrowland. So, but we have the Casey Jr. Soak Station, the Railroad Station, and Pete's Silly Sideshow, which is where we would probably have Mickey and Minnie meet now, since we didn't keep them in the Town Square Theater, nor did we keep their houses.
Yeah, and I think, obviously you need a dedicated space for them. I think it could work. So, we can always rotate which characters are in there. We'll leave our entertainment VP and all those guys in charge.
That's someone else's decision. Yeah, but you'll find a space for your favorite characters. Don't have faith in that much, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. We care about the characters as well. Just, our focus is on the attractions, and unfortunately our bias is always going to be that way. When you and I go to a park, we try to do as many rides as possible. So it's fair to say a lot of the decisions we make sort of reflect that mentality about the parks. Absolutely. And I think that kind of wraps up Fantasyland. Am I correct on that one?
Yeah, you are correct. And now we move into the future.
Yes, into the future. I think this one has always been near and dear to me. In fact, if you can see, I have a Tomorrowland poster over here. Even though I wasn't a Tomorrowland Attractions cast member on my college program, I was at Magic Kingdom Custodial, and I was primarily based in Tomorrowland. This land has always meant a lot to me. And
I'm a big sci-fi fan. I've always loved Tomorrowland as an area. And that pretty much applies to any Disney theme park I've been to. It's also, you and I know, the most problematic land to keep up, and the one that has the richest history because it's seen so many changes. So we had a lot of choices to make in this particular area.
Absolutely. And I think you and I both kind of agreed that, and again, this probably shows our age because we weren't around for the original version, but we did see the original version at Disneyland, both you and I, of the original aesthetic of Tomorrowland. But I think you and I both kind of agreed we enjoyed that 94 Tomorrowland theme where it was kind of a cohesive city. And I think we both agreed, am I correct, that we wanted to bring that back?
I seem to remember that we wanted to try to keep the storyline, but I think we had decided we wanted to do something closer to the original aesthetic while doing that, which is a little bit of a challenge in some ways.
Right. You're right. You're right. I had forgotten about that we had kind of compromised on that one.
So we tried to incorporate a lot of the attractions and the lore from the 1994-1995 redo, but we're sort of going back to the original aesthetic, which, ironically enough, they are currently actually restoring a lot of Tomorrowland to that aesthetic with a lot of their new paint jobs and just different things they've been working on. You saw the new sign they put out for Monsters, and just sort of a lot of gleaming whites with sort of accents of different colors.
Yeah, and I think we both really liked the original Tomorrowland aesthetic, but we both also loved the 94-95 storyline. So we came to the compromise of, really they occupy the same space. They do occupy the same space, but they don't necessarily contradict each other. So we really liked, how each area of Tomorrowland was kind of like a different part of the city. and I kind of insist on putting the original, well, not the original, obviously, but the Tomorrowland Transit Authority spiel back in that kind of discussed a lot of that theming.
Now approaching Tomorrowland Interplanetary Convention Center.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for quick history lesson / just fun lore lesson for people is sort of everything in that 1994 version tied in with one another. The alien encounter took place at the Tomorrowland Convention Center. The Timekeeper film was at the Metropolitan Science Center. The Carousel of Progress was presented by the Tomorrowland Metro Retro Historical Society. And of course, the People Mover was the Tomorrowland Transit Authority. And it all tied together. There's a lot of deep lore there that a lot of people were sort of unaware of, but really, to me, enhanced the whole idea of Tomorrowland.
Oh, for sure. And plus, I think we both agreed it kind of made it more timeless, too, because it was kind of like a fictional deal rather than actually Tomorrowland, which, again, Epcot kind of advanced that whole idea of the actual tomorrow in the Future World area. So, let's just have fun with it. So again, so we're gonna get into the attraction roster here, and coming into the line from the Fantasyland side, obviously you have the Tomorrowland Speedway, which for me, I don't know if it would be if I was starting from scratch if that would be the attraction I put in there, but given that nothing else has been in that space, it was an easy call to make. Go ahead and keep the Speedway, and then coming around the corner there, we kind of made the rule that if it broke ground, it was fair game. So we kept the Tron's Light Cycle Power Run, which, if you're not familiar with what it's going to be, it is already open in Shanghai Disneyland, and it looks beautiful. And
it's taking up a space that was previously empty, so they didn't take out any attractions for that, other than maybe shortening the Speedway track slightly, which has happened several times throughout the years. It's a great new attraction, and it fits Tomorrowland. Like, thematically, for me, that actually fits better in Tomorrowland than a lot of the stuff that is actually currently in Tomorrowland.
Yeah, agreed. And so obviously right next door to that, this could be a little controversial. We went with Space Mountain, of course, because nothing else has been in that space. But we actually went with the pre-2009 refurb version of Space Mountain, where on the loading dock you could actually look up, see the track. It just felt like, I know, Sean, you were pretty passionate about this one. It just felt like it was a more, I don't know. I'll let you kind of describe what your thoughts are.
I feel like the queue was more atmospheric before they put in some of those screens. They've recently turned off some of the games, so some of that has been restored, but it had this kind of nice, creepy, eerie feeling to it. And the loading area was out there in space, and from the People Mover, you could see a lot more as well. And you could see the loading area, and it all kind of went together very well. So I kind of wanted to go with that version, just because I didn't necessarily like the changes they made in 2009. I know there were some advantages to that. I think they've been able to make it a little bit darker than it used to be. But I don't know. I just really liked it the way it was the first time I experienced it.
And I kind of agree with that, but I wouldn't be upset if you went the other way. I think I'd go with you if you went the other way on this, because I do like what the Imagineers were trying to do with that and make it darker, and I do appreciate that, and I think in a certain way it does add something to the ride experience when you do that. But given that I was kind of leaning the direction you were going, I think it was the right call for us to make.
Also, I want my speed ramp on the way out back. They took that out recently.
I think that's fair. It was there. We can have it.
All right. So then we come to the Skyway Station, the other Skyway Station.
Right. Obviously, coming from Fantasyland riding over, we have the Skyway Tomorrowland back there. For those of you not aware, the restrooms kind of in between Carousel of Progress and Space Mountain there used to have the Skyway Station on top of them. In fact, the Skyway Station was there for many, many years after the Skyway actually closed. And it wasn't until that same 2009 refurb that they finally demolished the top half of that building and finally put it to rest. I kind of
missed that little rock waterfall from it, too, because that stayed in for several years after the Skyway was gone.
And as of late 2006, when I was a college program cast member, the Skyway buckets were actually still in that building too. I remember walking there, and you could actually see the Skyway buckets still there. But I don't feel like I'm giving away anything I shouldn't, since it's obviously long gone. But yeah, they were still.
It's history, and it's common knowledge, at least to some people. I don't think there's anything wrong.
Yeah. Don't want to get my hand slapped when I hopefully return to work.
Speaking of returning to work, that's adorable.
I know, right? Obviously, around the corner, Carousel Progress has been the only thing in that space, and as even if there was an option to not include Carousel Progress, I don't think we'd entertain it even for a moment.
We would definitely have it. Unfortunately, the nature of Carousel of Progress is it needs to be updated far more frequently than it is. So, but we'd go with the current version because it's the most current we could possibly do.
Yeah.
I think we'd want the Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow as opposed to the other theme song they used for a while. Now is the time.
Right. Though it is a quality theme song, you can't beat. There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow. So that was the neat.
If we could start from scratch, what I would probably do is do a version where it's the 1900s, the 1940s, the 1980s, and then current times. But current times being as post-apocalyptic as they are, maybe that's a bad idea.
Yeah, that's fair.
Something I forgot to put in the notes is we would also return the Tomorrowland stage, which used to be between the Carousel of Progress and Buzz Lightyear over there. We'd put the
Galaxy. Yes, yeah,
Galaxy Palace Theater.
Yeah, Galaxy Palace Theater. I feel like that's a better venue to have the shows. Plus, it was a bigger venue, and I love the Christmas show they used to do in there. It was the night before Christmas. I liked it better there than having that stage out in the middle of Tomorrowland. Even though that is a nice stage, there's no shade. The other one was the Galaxy Palace Theater.
There's seating, and we're literally replacing a parking lot. So I don't feel strongly enough about the parking lot to say we should have that.
Yeah. So sorry to our cast that would park back there. Yeah, we're going to put the theater back in.
We'll bust you in from Epcot. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, or from Angel Stadium, whatever.
Now we're definitely getting fired up.
So
moving on.
Moving on. So, of course, as we kind of alluded to earlier, the People Mover, of course, would be there. Of course, we would, this might actually be a controversial decision. And frankly, I could go either way on this. People Mover, Tomorrowland Transit Authority. But we would have the Tomorrowland Transit Authority as it was pre the 2009 refurb. We would have that spiel back because we just felt like it really tied in that whole city theme better. Now, if you want to call it People Mover, TTA, Tomorrowland Transit Authority, I don't care. As long as the attraction's there, I'm happy. I don't know. Did you have a strong
opinion? I might go with the current name, which is Tomorrowland Transit Authority People Mover, because that kind of encompasses both, but we definitely want it part of that cohesive city theme. So TTA has to be at least part of the name.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. And of course, we would have the Starjets still flying up ahead, or the Astro Orbiter. We like that it's still elevated here. Unfortunately, Disneyland, I think, made the unpopular decision to bring it down to ground level. But we, of course, will have ours still up there, and the only place it's been, as far as I'm aware, on top of the platform.
Yeah, did we go with it being the Starjets? So the original sort of Saturn V rocket design.
Yeah, I didn't really have a strong opinion on that one. You decide. What do you think?
Okay, all right. This is hard because very much the aesthetic for the old Tomorrowland would be the Starjets. However, maybe it needs to be the Astro Orbiter for the theme of the area to work. It's a very
well. If we are keeping the spiel, it is referred to as the Astro Orbiter in the TTA. But again, I think that
would the Astro Orbiter work if everything else around it was painted gleaming white? Now we're getting into all kinds of aesthetic.
Well, we would of course look.
It should be a tough call, but it is.
Yeah. Well, of course, we would look at the whole land. I think this would be one of the final decisions we'd make. So we'd look at the whole land, see how it fit aesthetically, and then kind of make our decision. We'd have somebody more talented than us make the concept art. We'd figure it out from there. But if you have any strong opinions, please comment below what you think.
Any opinions you have on what your roster would be, because I think it's very interesting to see what conclusions other people would have come to.
But to be fair, if we had a third person in our group, we might have come to some different conclusions also, if somebody had a strong opinion one way or the other.
Yeah, because it was just you and I talking. On a bigger committee, we might have, I didn't think of that, or maybe you're right about that. So.
Absolutely. And, and this one, I think, thematically would be maybe unpopular, but I think we both love Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, so we go ahead and keep that there. I know that they're big fans of it if you had wings and the Dream Flight and all that, and I do not fault those people for enjoying that attraction. I wrote it before it changed, but I think for you and I, we both love Space Ranger Spin. So
yeah, and I think that's kind of the public consensus, is that's a very popular attraction, and I think one thing that can sort of guide you to making the conclusion that that's correct is Buzz Lightyear was first built, using that old track from Dreamflight and If You Had Wings here. But then that attraction got replicated in, I think, just about every Magic Kingdom style park around the world. Whereas If You Had Wings and Dreamflight never got replicated anywhere. So it might, even though I would maybe argue against some things on this, I think that kind of gives you an idea of
course,
how much like your attraction. The interactive element certainly adds a lot to it. But those,
of course, we're kind of arguing against ourselves because we also said that we wanted the unique experience of 20,000 Leagues, and that's why we justified axing those two. But again, it just depends on the merits of the attraction. And I think Space Ranger Spin is still the best attraction that was in that space. And obviously, I would respect anybody who disagrees on that one, but that's the decision we made.
Thematically, it's a little tougher than the other ones. Although the other ones are. Dreamflight was about history in the same way Carousel of Progress was, and if You Had Wings, in some ways, was a commercial for all the places you could go on Eastern Airlines.
Yeah, but there were attractions when Magic Kingdom was kind of low on attractions, so we can appreciate them for that.
I would love to experience them. I never got to experience either one, but based on what I researched.
And to be fair to anybody who's curious watching, anything where we needed to make a decision where we hadn't prior written the version of the attraction, we actually did watch as thorough of videos on the attraction so we could be well versed in the decisions we were making. So we did watch ride through videos. So
we know our stuff. We're not some people who only know what we saw this week.
Yes, exactly. So
that being said, we're keeping Buzz Lightyear. As we move on to the left, you have a building where you now have the Monsters Incorporated laugh floor, which was previously home to the Timekeeper, and before that, other Circle Vision films, including Magic Carpet Around the World, and I believe American Journeys was another one that was hosted over there.
Yeah, and we decided to go with Timekeeper. We just felt like it was the best compromise between, fitting with the theme of the land as well as being an entertaining attraction. Don't get me wrong, I love Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor in a vacuum. Like if it was in a Pixar land somewhere or in a Monsters area somewhere, I would be all about it. But given even though that was probably my favorite attraction that was there, it's not a lot over the Timekeeper, and Timekeeper just fits in that area so much better than I felt like Monsters Inc. does.
Monsters has always been a tough fit for me, and what I love about Timekeeper is I really enjoy Circle Vision, but this is the only one that sort of incorporated a story, and that story, again, was tied into the overall lore of Tomorrowland that we're trying to keep intact. So I think for what we're trying to accomplish, keeping Timekeeper is definitely the right call there. And, of course, having Robin Williams in an attraction is never going to hurt it in my book.
Absolutely. And I think, honestly, it may have gotten a resurge in popularity had it still been around after his unfortunate passing. He's just been such a big part of Disney history. And then also staying with the theme of Tomorrowland that we wanted to keep, we would actually put the alien encounter back in across the street there where, there's been attractions such as, Mission to Mars and, most recently Stitch's Great Escape. We felt that Alien Encounter was that perfect attraction that, even though it was a little terrifying, even I, the last time I rode it, which I was already in high school, I still jumped quite a bit riding it.
I was, I think, just about to go into high school, and I was super nervous to do it. Alien Encounter definitely exists in this space of either you loved it or you hated it, but you and I are both in the love it camp. I love the storyline involving the evil XS Tech Corporation. People think XS Tech is only interested in Earth for profit, but we merely consider that a necessary byproduct of making your lives better. I don't know. I love the story for it, the effects, the whole experience. I only got to experience it one time, and I really wish I could do it again. So in our version, I'll get to do it again.
Yes, absolutely. And I just felt like it was a nice compliment to the park in a way that I didn't feel like Stitch's Great Escape was, because it didn't really. Stitch's Great Escape, as we've discussed, didn't really work on the scary end of the scale, because it wasn't scary enough for the people seeking something scary, but it was also too frightening for the kids. It was kind of trying to aim at, and it really ended up not really being a strong audience for either. So at least with Alien Encounter, it succeeded in the demographic it was trying to reach, and for that, and there was a lot of care and a lot of fun Easter eggs and things, and a lot of fun humor in that attraction that we felt like we wanted to have it back.
Yeah, so, Stitch has its fans, but it's a pretty small group of fans.
And again, nothing against the character of the movie; they're both fantastic. This was simply just based on the attraction that was there, and that is all.
All right. And that has actually taken us completely around the park through our attractions roster. Before we wrap it up, we did want to talk about some of the entertainment offerings.
Now the nitty gritty of the entertainment offerings, obviously with the meet and greet locations, things like that, we would leave that up to our entertainment partners who know far more about this stuff than we do. However, we did have some opinions on the nighttime spectaculars, so of course we're gonna break our own rules and talk about those. I think you and I, in a kind of a controversial decision, we both actually really like the current show, Happily Ever After, and we decided to keep that as the nighttime fireworks spectacular. I
really love it. I think it's very well done. And for me, I know Wishes has its fans, but Happily Ever After actually resonates with me a little bit more.
Yeah,
and I think that's because I like the projections. I don't know.
And for those of you who aren't familiar, the three, as far as I'm aware, the three primary shows for the fireworks spectacular, it was started out with Fantasy in the Sky, which just had music, and it was a very nice show. And they still show a good chunk of it on New Year's Eve and the night before if you ever want to catch it. And then it was Wishes, and then finally it was the current Happily Ever After. So those were kind of our three choices there, and we both loved the current show. I know Renee Renee will give us a hard time about that because she's a huge Wishes fan. But
a lot of this will probably get us the most hate because people really love Wishes.
And again, Wishes, I love the show, but I think you and I, we both are kind of in a unique perspective that we both watched Remember Dreams Come True, which borrowed some of the best parts of Wishes first.
But it has stuff that covers the history of Disneyland, which, of course, if it's not already obvious, we love the history of theme parks. So any show that incorporates that is going to resonate a lot more with you and me.
And since, and because of that show, in which we consider a masterpiece and still the finest fireworks show I've ever seen, incorporate a lot of the best parts of Wishes, and we saw that before Wishes, it's kind of hard for us to have the same nostalgia for it that a lot of other people do, which there's nothing wrong with.
Nothing wrong with that. If you love Wishes, totally understand. But I actually do think that this is one of the cases where I do like the replacement brand and the original. We're trying to combine the best of the past and present. You and I lean towards the past a lot, but there are definitely things where we say, no, that this newer thing is better. So this is
this is one of them. And this is actually probably one that a lot of our peers will disagree with. But we love the show. And on top of that, going right back to the past, I think, since there has not, this is, I don't think, too controversial decision, because for our nighttime parade, it really is only, as far as I'm aware, it was there are
really only two options.
Yeah, Main Street Electrical Parade or Spectra Magic, and we actually decided to go Spectra Magic. It has that wonderful, wonderful soundtrack, and for me, that parade is the nighttime at Magic Kingdom for me, and I think we both kind of agreed on that one.
And that was unique, created specifically for the Magic Kingdom. It only ever ran there, and it had a little bit higher technology than the Main Street Electrical Parade. We're talking 1990s technology versus 1970s technology. And since you and I are again looking at things holistically, if we were going to have the Main Street Electrical Parade somewhere, we'd probably have it over at Disneyland. So I think we were okay if you have one parade on one coast and one on the other.
We're not putting out a DCA. I'm kidding.
Well, that's a discussion for another video, because we are 53 minutes into this thing, so we will. I think now that we've covered the nighttime spectaculars, that pretty much wraps up our idealized version of the Magic Kingdom.
I think we sorry, one last thing. The daytime parade. I think we both went with the current Festival of Fantasy. That's the name of the parade. Yeah.
I'd go with that. I'm not as big a parade person, so my opinions are not as strong on that. But I think the current parade is very solid.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a good wrap up for our Magic Kingdom video. I don't want to keep this going too long, so I'll let you close this out there, Sean.
Thanks for joining us through this journey around our idealized version of the park, and sort of a little bit of a journey through history we took you through along the way. We had a lot of fun coming up with this and talking about it, so we hope someone out there has enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed this one, we're probably going to try to come back with a video of our idealized version of Epcot in the very near future.
Yeah, absolutely, and it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks for watching. Take care.